Hey, everybody. Oh, hang on. There we go. All right. Wow. I already have some technical difficulties. My videos aren't working. Why aren't my videos working? I will be doggoned if I know. Okay, so I guess I'll perform the theme song. Boom, ba da 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 boom, ba da 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 da. Mr. Weber's Web of Mystery. Ooh, 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 ah. Ba-da-da-da-da. I don't know why it's not working. Okay, well, the really important stuff I think is still working. So at least we have that going for us. Everybody in chat, welcome to the show. So good to have you join us. If you are joining us for the first time, and actually did some promotion for this one. So that's entirely likely. Someone could be. Welcome to the show. Basically, Mr. Weber's Webo Mystery is the show I've wanted to do since I was a kid. And I started listening to old time radio shows, and being kind of an ADD, kind of a neurodivergent person. I'm not so much of a reader, but boy, do I love to listen. And so I will sit with you. We will listen to this show. I haven't heard this particular episode before, so I have a feeling it's going to be really great. And I am so happy. I am so happy to tell everyone that we are still suffering from some very high winds out here where I am in Southern California. And it's very scary for a lot of people. And of course, my heart goes out to them. I know yours does as well. It is so hard to live out here sometimes because our winds are like people who live in hurricane conditions. They know what kind of winds we have. And our winds are very dry, and they carry fire very easily, and they light fires very easily. So our heart goes out to everybody who's going through the struggle right now. It has been ongoing here in California. But as adversity hits me, I don't know about you, but I always find that entertaining and sharing things that I love really protect my soul. And that's something a friend of mine said during this whole thing: protect your soul. And I really appreciate that, because that is what it is all about. So Retro Tiburon, my very good friend, thank you. Yes, we are safe for now. We're doing well. Right now, we're actually anticipating rain this weekend. That would be great for us, except they say it's going to come really hard. So we might have landslides. Yeah, we're probably getting landslides. And hopefully everything will go well on Sunday, because we'll be doing a show on Sunday, Joe Townsend and I. It's crazy. It's crazy. We're dealing with it the best we can. As I already put up on the screen, tonight we will be listening to an episode of Mr. Keen, Tracer of Lost Persons. We will be listening to an episode called Murder and the Star of Death. When the wonderful, incredible Joe Townsend made this graphic for me, I didn't tell him the whole title. I abridged the title because the people who wrote this show are so wordy, as you can see. And I did promise to tell a little bit of information. I want to say gossip, but it's a little gossipy. I get a little gossipy. I freely admit that. So let's talk about the people who wrote tonight's episode. There were early days in radio where you'd have one microphone. This is like in the late 20s, maybe two microphones. And usually there'd be like a microphone for a piano, and then maybe someone would sing. They'd get the other microphone and trade it off with an announcer. Very early days, they did not really know how to expand a radio studio. Well, that happened rather quickly. So in the early 30s, we started to get what we know as radio shows. As a matter of fact, in the very early 30s, there was a writing team, Frank and Ann Hummert. Now, they came from advertising because in the very early days of old time radio, advertising agencies were the studios, people who created shows and wrote shows and cast shows and made radio shows what they were. In the early days, they were advertising people. Frank Hummert was a very successful advertising executive and also a creative. He needed someone who could keep up with him and who was a great writer. And he found that in Anne, well, at first she was his assistant. And then after about 5 years of working together, they fell in love and they got married. One of the things that they used to say about Frank and Anne was that Anne was one of the few people. Oh, that's very cool. Oh, sorry. I'm just reading a message from Joe. Joe Townsell, my co-producer and co-creator here at Weber Internet Thingy. It's so great to hear from you guys. Here's Chris. Chris isn't feeling well, so thank you for joining us, Chris. I of course mentioned wordy, and Chris being a writer is like, I resemble that remark. Of course. Raphael, very excited to hear about Ralphie and how does Ralphie work in after the show, Raphael? After the show. That's when you're going to hear it. Okay, the nice thing about the Hummerts is they were audacious. They would take chances that maybe no one else would take, and in doing so, kicked the evolution of broadcast media forward. Just the two of them by leaps and bounds. Mr. Keen is a great example of that. It was originally a novel from 1906, and it was called The Tracer of Lost Persons. So that wordiness can actually be attributed to the novel's author, Robert Chambers. The show itself started in 1937. It ran until April 19th in 1955. It was competing very well with television. Okay, if people are sending me messages, no, sorry, I shouldn't have left Facebook open. What am I doing? I'm interrupting myself, and I'm kind of getting angry at myself. I won't lie to you. Long into the television era, these soap operas that they were creating was, oh, did I tell you about the soap operas? Oh, well, you got to hear about the soap operas. As a matter of fact, the phrase soap opera was created because of the shows that the Hummerts were writing, because they were sponsored, a lot of them, by soap companies. The series, Mr. Keen, was created by the Hummerts. I'm sorry, I'm jumping backwards in my notes. Some of the soaps that they created, radio fans will recognize these. A lot of these names ended up in Bugs Bunny cartoons, the popular culture of the day. Just Plain Bill, that was one of their shows. Ma Perkins, I've heard that show, and I got to tell you, it's fantastic. I love that show. I never thought I would like soap operas. There's one called Mary Noble, Backstage Wife. Bob and Ray used to make fun of it, and they used to call it Mary Backstage Noble Wife. Radio historian Jim Cox had said that the Hummerts created daytime radio serials that they intended to seize the housewives' attention and alter the pattern of their daily existence. This is how our mothers' found their stories. Radio, as Americans experienced it during the golden age, likely would have been vastly different had Frank and Ann Hummert not been on the scene. Actress Mary Jane Higby was on one of their shows for 18 years. Her show was called When a Girl Marries. She said, and she would know, Unquestionably, the Hummerts had a profound influence on the whole literature of soap opera. They, more than anyone else, determined the shape it took. I love this kind of history. According to Jim Cox, by the 1940s, and the show we're going to be hearing tonight is from 1949, the Hummerts controlled, hold on to your hat, the Hummerts controlled 46% of the national weekday broadcast schedule. Can you imagine? Shonda Rhimes, Aaron Spelling, they didn't even come close. 46%. By 1939, the Hummerts programs were responsible for more than half the advertising revenues generated by daytime radio. The kindly Mr. Keene and his faithful assistant, Mike Clancy, very stereotypical Irish, by the way, they entertained listeners for 18 years. And with 1,690 nationwide broadcasts, 1,690 broadcasts, Mr. Keene was the most resilient private detective in a namesake role. The nearest competitors were Nick Carter, Master Detective. We've played him on the show before. The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes. You've probably heard of him. Played him on the show a couple of times. And The Adventures of the Falcon. I think it's almost time that we put Adventures of the Falcon on the schedule. I think so. Now, only 59 of the 1,690 Mr. Keene programs are known to survive. And I just want to give you a taste right now. So I am trusting that that this will work. I'm going to share the screen. Where are you? Sorry, camera's in the way. There we go. Okay. So the first thing I want to play for you is actually just to get a taste of what the Hummerts are like. Just to get a taste. We're going to listen to the very beginning of one of their shows, and it's one of my favorite radio shows of all time. It's called The Romance of Helen Trent. So let's listen, shall we?
Time now for The Romance of Helen Trent. The Romance of Helen Trent is the story of a woman who will not let life pass her by because she is over 35. Instead, she proves what so many women long to prove, that the romance of youth can exist into middle life and even beyond.
That's all I wanted to play for you. This is some of the most targeted. I mean, you can tell that the Hummerts are from advertising. Some of the most targeted literature you're ever going to hear, because they are nailing down sort of the wants and needs and fantasies and desires of their audience, who are mostly ladies doing really tough housework right now. Like, before the modern conveniences of a washing machine or a dishwasher or a refrigerator or any of these things, women's lives were so labor intensive. And so they would listen to these shows, and frequently the shows were meant to talk right to them. So the Hummerts were shameless. And I hope we're going to hear a lot of that in tonight's episode. One of the episodes we're not going to listen to that is so incredibly typical of the Hummerts writing on Mr. Keene was called The Woman No One Wanted. I just love it so much. Okay, let's get started. This is Mr. Keene, The Case of Murder and the Star of Death. We're going to be listening to it from our good friends at the Old Time Radio Researchers Group. And once again, it's from 1949, June 6th. June 9th. And here we go. The Case of Murder and the Star of Death.
It's time now for Mr. Keene, Tracer of Lost Persons. Ladies and gentlemen, Amison and Colinos present Mr. Keene, Tracer of Lost Persons. one of the most famous characters of American fiction in one of radio's most thrilling dramas. Tonight and every Thursday at the same time, the famous old investigator takes from his file and brings to us one of his most celebrated missing persons cases. Tonight's case is entitled The Case of Murder and the Star of Death. Anacin is like a doctor's prescription. That is, it contains not just one, but a combination of medically proven active ingredients. That's why Anacin gives such incredibly fast, effective relief from headache, neuritis, or neuralgia pain. Many people have been introduced to Anacin tablets by their own physicians or dentists. If you haven't tried Anacin, then you may be surprised to see how incredibly fast it brings relief from neuralgic, neuritis, or headache pains. For most effective relief, use only as directed. Ask for Anacin at any drugstore. Now for Mr. Keene and the case of murder and the Star of Death. Our scene opens in a large and fashionable home in a New York suburb. A dinner party has been in progress. But now the three guests have gathered in the library, where the host, Mark Adams, observes with some amusement that they're all looking forward to a surprise he's been hinting about. A surprise he is soon to reveal to his regret.
Oh, Ralphie, what was that
Yes,
about?
indeed.
Mark,
Yes, Loretta.
what is this remarkable surprise you have for us?
Yes, what's the big secret? You've got something up your sleeve, old man.
Oh, no doubt about it, I have, Paul. As a matter of fact, that's why I invited you all to dinner this evening.
Then please don't keep us in suspense.
I shan't, Edith, my dear, but first, a prelude to my little exhibit. Loretta, you're a connoisseur of precious stones. Tell me, what's your favorite stone?
Well, Mark, I suppose most women would prefer a diamond, but I'm partial to sapphires.
Big one.
So wait a minute. Is anyone getting this at all right now? Is this happening? It might be the wind. The wind might have stopped my show. That would be terrible. Oh, God damn it. Wait a minute. How about now? I mean, you're getting me, right? You're getting me. Oh. Because I hit pause on the show. Okay. I can't tell what's going on. Oh, you can hear me. Oh, good. Can you see me? Can you see me? Yes, me. Okay, good. Good. All right. We can get back to the show. I'm going to have to edit this out later. All right.
Ones.
What are you getting at, Mark?
Paul, you're as well known a collector of precious stones as I am. What would you say was the greatest sapphire in existence?
The Star of Death, of course.
Star of Death. What a dreadful name.
Would you like to see it?
You mean you have the Star of Death here?
In this box, on this table.
What?
I sold over 3/4 of my own collection of jewels to buy this sapphire from the Hancock estate, but it was worth it. See for yourself. There.
Oh,
Look.
lovely.
Really, it's magnificent.
Oh, it's beautiful, Mark.
When I said I had a treat in store for you, I meant it. What happened to the lights?
No, they just went
What
out.
could it have
This
been?
is very
Put the lights on, somebody.
Oh, wait, I'll find the switch. Here it is. There,
Oh.
that's better. Someone must have accidentally brushed against the wall switch and turned the lights off.
Mark, the sapphire.
It's gone. The Star of Death is gone. Very well, I can go along with the joke. Will the one who took the stone please replace it in the box on the table? Look here, a practical joke is one thing, but that sapphire's worth a fortune.
Mark,
Just a moment, Edith. Someone in this room is evidently a fool or a thief. But I'll give him or her a chance to save face. I'm going to put the lights out once again, and when I turn them back on, I'll expect to see that sapphire replaced inside this box, with no questions asked. Otherwise, I'm calling the police. You'll have just 5 seconds while I turn out the lights. Here goes. Remember, 5 seconds. Out! Ah!
Mark!
Let me at that light switch.
Mark! He's on the floor.
Don't touch him, Edith. He's dead.
My father had been stabbed to death with a letter opener, Mr. Keene, taken from the desk. He was murdered for that sapphire, the Star of Death.
I read about the case this morning, Kay, in the newspapers. My partner, Mike Clancy, brought it to my attention.
Sure, it was one of the strangest cases in years. All 3 suspects were arrested, boss. But the police don't know which one murdered Mr. Adams and stole that sapphire.
Where were you at the time of the tragedy, Kay?
Away for the weekend at a friend's house. Oh, Dad had only taken my advice. I begged him not to buy that sapphire.
Why were you against his buying it, Kay?
You've heard about the stone, I'm sure, Mr. Keene. Its history is horrible. That's how it got its name, the Star of Death. 3 people died while it was in their possession, all violently. Father was the 4th victim.
Tell me something about your father's guests. Who was present that night?
There was Edith Sims. Father was very fond of her. I even think there was a possibility he might have married her. He'd been very lonely since Mother died 2 years ago.
And the other guests?
Paul Dudley is a jewel importer like Father was. They were close friends. And Mrs. Loretta Waynard is a well-known socialite, a widow. She's very rich, Mr. Keene, and she'd never have any reason to steal.
And that was all?
Yes, Mr. Keene. The servants had all left for the night. No one else was there but Father and his 3 kids.
The jewel, apparently, was never found on any of them.
No, Mr. Keene. All 3 persons swear they're innocent. And, well, it's hard for me to believe that any one of them could have done a thing like that.
How does it strike you, Mike?
Well, it's a puzzler, Mr. Keene. Sure, what happened to the sapphire? It couldn't have just disappeared.
No, Mike, and yet I'm sure all 3 suspects were thoroughly searched by the police.
Mr. Keene, couldn't it have been someone else? A thief who sneaked into the house?
It's possible, Kay, but I doubt it. By the way, who described the details of the murder to the police?
All 3 of Father's guests,
And their stories were identical?
in every detail. Will you help me, Mr. Keene? I have faith in the police, naturally, but this case is so mysterious. You're the most famous investigator in the country. And if you could work with the police...
I'll try my best, Kay. And I'll also try to recover the stolen sapphire for which your father was murdered.
Oh, thank you.
I suggest you go home now and wait for my call. I'll want to look the house over. But before I do that, I think I've got an idea.
What is it, boss?
It's rather unusual, but if Lieutenant Hale of the Homicide Squad is willing to cooperate with me, maybe Mark Adams' killer will pay far more for that sapphire than he ever bargained for.
But what you're suggesting, Mr. Keene, is dangerous.
I know that, Lieutenant Hale. One of your 3 prisoners is a killer, but I doubt if you'll ever find out which one is guilty unless you release all 3.
But what good will that do?
That sapphire, the Star of Death, hasn't been found yet, has it?
No, Mr. Keene.
Then it must be hidden somewhere.
Obviously.
Very well. Your police officers were with the 3 suspects from the time they left the Adams house, isn't that right?
In other words, the sapphire is still inside the house.
Exactly.
But we've searched the place thoroughly, Mr. Keene.
The murderer wouldn't have been foolish enough to stab Mark Adams to death if he or she didn't have an excellent hiding place for the sapphire.
Then how will we get the stone?
We'll let the killer find it for us and expose himself at the same time.
Sounds like a good idea if it works.
You can have the 3 suspects trailed by your plainclothesmen, but I prefer you wouldn't. Any slip-up would make the killer suspicious and spoil my plan.
All right. I'll go along with you, Mr. Keene, on one condition.
What's that, Lieutenant?
I'm going to station a man at all the airports and railway terminals. I don't want my pigeon to fly the coop.
I'm sure your pigeon will stay right here, Lieutenant, until he has his hands on that sapphire, the Star of Death. And when he reaches for it again, we'll have our hands on him.
This is the library, Mr. Keene. It's the room my father was murdered.
All right, Kay. We'll examine it thoroughly for any trace of the missing sapphire.
Well, I'll go over it with a fine tooth comb, Mr. Keene.
Good, Mike. I suppose that heavy desk has been gone through, Kay?
At least 1,000 times. The police looked under the carpets and opened up the upholstery and the chairs. There isn't a spot in this room that hasn't been searched.
Isn't that the doorbell?
Yes. Excuse me, Mr. Keene.
Mike.
Yes, boss.
Never mind the search. After what Kay has just told me, I'm sure we'll have to wait for some kind of a break. And we may be getting one right now.
How, sir?
I've been expecting the murderer to make some excuse to return to this house for the stone. Let's see who's at the door.
Mr. Keene, this is Paul Dudley.
How do you do, Mr. Dudley?
Mr. Keene, this is a great pleasure, sir. I'm very glad to know you.
My partner, Mike Clancy.
How do you do?
Pleased to meet you.
Mr. Keene, Lieutenant Hale at police headquarters told me you were responsible for my release. I thought you'd be here with Kay Adams, and I wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your confidence in me.
That's quite all right.
The murder was a shocking thing, and Mark Adams was my friend. But I trust the police now realize who the guilty woman is.
Oh, you believe they have the killer?
Naturally. That's the only reason they let me go, isn't it?
And who do you think she is, Mr. Dudley?
Why, Edith Sims, of course.
Oh, no. Edith Sims.
It's a horrible thing to say, I know, Kay, but I know more about Edith and your father than you do.
And just what do you know, Mr. Dudley?
I know Edith was poor, Mr. Keene, and she wanted to marry Mark. I also know he'd made up his mind not to marry again because of his daughter, Kay.
I see.
Sounds like more company, boss.
Yes, you stay here with Mr. Dudley, Mike. I'll go to the door with Kay.
This way, Mr. Keene. Is it true, Mr. Keene, that Edith Sims is being held by the police for father's murder?
No, Kay. No one's being held at the moment.
Kay, darling.
Oh, Edith.
Are you all right? I know how you must feel, dear. When your father died, everything I lived for went out of the world.
This is Mr. Keene, Edith.
Mr. Keene?
He's investigating father's death.
May I ask what brought you here, Miss Sims?
I came to comfort Kay, Mr. Keene. And I want to stay a few days, darling, here with you. We can console each other, perhaps just a little.
Of course, Edith.
That woman isn't here, is she?
What woman, Miss Sims?
Loretta Waynard.
Oh, no. No, she isn't.
Oh, thank goodness.
Why are you so relieved, Miss Sims?
Oh, did I sound relieved? I didn't mean...
Please, Edith, tell Mr. Keene everything you know. He's here to help me.
Well, I have no right to say this, Mr. Keene. But then I have no right to hold it back. I overheard Loretta Waynard quarrel with Mark Adams.
On the night he was murdered?
Yes. They were in the study just before dinner. Loretta told him she'd learned that he wanted to marry me, and she said he was out of his mind.
They must have been closer friends than I thought.
Loretta despised me, I know it, but I didn't care. It was what she said to Mark that hurt.
And what was that?
She said a man would be better off dead than married to a fortune hunter like me. Mark became angry, and she apologized, Mr. Keene.
Miss Sims, would you wait inside for me, please? Here's my partner, Mike Clancy. I want to have a word with him in private.
Come with me, Edith, dear.
Very well.
Oh, boss, we... Saints preserve us, another customer.
Yes, Mike, and I believe this one will be the last. The third and last guest at the dinner party where Mark Adams was murdered and a fabulous sapphire stolen. I'll open the door. You're Mrs. Loretta Waynard?
Yes. Is Kay Adams here? I came to pay my respects in her bereavement.
Please come in. My name is Keene, Mrs. Waynard.
Mr. Keene? The famous investigator? Well, this is a lucky coincidence. I'd heard you were investigating Mark Adams' murder, and I was coming to see you.
Why?
Because I know who murdered Mark. I realized it after I left police headquarters. I remembered a remark at dinner the night Mark was murdered. Paul Dudley said it, Mr. Keene, and I remember his exact words.
What were they, Mrs. Waynard?
He said he'd give anything for possession of that sapphire, the Star of Death, and that it was a jewel any man would murder for.
Did Paul Dudley know Mr. Adams had it in his possession at the time?
Well, I couldn't say, Mr. Keene, but I'm telling you the truth, and Edith Sims is my witness.
Very well. We'll give you a chance to prove it now. Miss Sims is inside, along with Mr. Dudley. Will you join them, Mrs. Waynard?
Certainly. I'm quite willing to make that statement to Paul's face.
Well, Mike?
Sure, and we've got a fine jigsaw puzzle on our hands, boss.
Each one accuses another, and their stories are all equally strong. The thing to do now is to find out who's lying, Mike, and put our hands on that fabulous sapphire. And when we do, the Star of Death can claim another victim when the killer gets the electric chair for murder.
In just a moment, we'll return to Mr. Keene and the case of murder and the Star of Death. Meanwhile, here's a marvelous new scientific discovery that actually helps prevent cavities in your teeth. Yes, actually helps prevent cavities. It's Colinos Anti-Decay Tooth Powder with ammonium ion. Greatest dental discovery since the invention of the toothbrush. Discovered by a great Midwestern university, this scientific ingredient reduces the lactobacilli bacteria in the mouth to help prevent harmful tooth decay. New Colinos is the first world-famous dentifrice to offer ammonium ion and retain its pleasant minty flavor and popular price. Neither this new Colinos powder nor any other ammonium ion dentifrice is a cure-all, but your dentist will tell you that in most cases, new Colinos, correctly used, reduces tooth decay, reduces the number of cavities. Think what that means to you and your children. Fewer fillings, less pain, less trouble. Above all, healthier teeth. And healthier teeth mean a cleaner mouth, more pleasing breath. Wonderful new Colinos is dentist recommended, dentist approved. So do as your dentist tells you. For brighter teeth, sweeter breath. Yes, and for fewer cavities, get new Colinos Anti-Decay Tooth Powder. Now back to Mr. Keene and the case of murder and the Star of Death. The murder of Mark Adams, the prominent jewel merchant, brings Mr. Keene, the great investigator, and his partner Mike Clancy on the trail of one of the cleverest jewel thieves in the country. For Mark Adams was murdered for the Star of Death, a fabulous sapphire that Mr. Keene believes has been hidden inside the Adams home by the killer. Now, the three people who were with the victim at the time of his death are in the house, along with Kay Adams, the victim's daughter. And as Mr. Keene and Mike gather them together in the room where Adams was murdered.
We seem to have reached an impasse in the mystery of Mark Adams' death, ladies and gentlemen. All three of you are under suspicion of murder.
How do you
Just
say
a
that?
moment, please. Mr. Dudley.
Well, Mr. Keene?
You told me a few moments ago that, in your opinion, Edith Sims committed the crime.
Paul, how could you say such a thing of me?
You loved him, Edith, and he refused to marry you.
That isn't true.
Mr. Dudley is also among the accused.
You mean someone says that I'm the murderer?
Loretta Waynard.
Why, I'll not
Take it easy, Mr. Dudley. The boss wants me to keep this conversation on a friendly level, so to speak.
And lastly, Mrs. Waynard joins the list of suspects.
What? Who could have blamed me for it, Mr. Keene?
I did, Mrs. Waynard.
Edith, you.
I overheard what you said to Mark. You told him he'd be better off dead than married to me. You loved him too, and you were furious because he loved me.
How dare you say that? How dare... Mrs. Waynard.
She tripped over the rug, Mr. Keene.
She struck her head against the floor. She's unconscious.
Would you carry her inside, Mr. Dudley? I'll call a doctor.
No. I'll be all right. I don't need a doctor.
She's coming around.
Better see that she rests for a few minutes anyway.
Here, let me help you, Mrs. Waynard. In spite of what you said about me, I'm not angry with you.
Help her in here, Paul.
All right, Kay.
There's a studio couch in this room.
Mike, I just noticed something.
What was it, boss?
Just before Mrs. Waynard tripped, I saw Paul Dudley bending over the desk looking at something.
But there's nothing on that desk but a blotter and a pen, Mr. Keene.
Wait. Don't examine it now. I think someone's coming.
Kay Adams said there was some water out here, and I thought Mrs. Waynard... Oh, here's the pitcher on the table.
How's she feeling, Mr. Dudley?
A little better. Oh, by the way, Mr. Keene, I'm remaining here in the Adams home for the night. I live upstate, and the next train is very late. Kay Adams has offered me a room.
I see.
Excuse me.
Well, that's two of them, boss. Miss Sims made an excuse to stay here, and so is Paul Dudley.
I'm also quite sure that Loretta Waynard will be too ill to go home this evening.
That makes three suspects, all trying to stay here in the house where that sapphire is hidden.
Come over to this desk again, Mike. I want to see what interested Mr. Dudley a moment ago.
Well, it's a very fancy desk, sir. Look at the leather covering.
It's kept in place by nail studs. And one of those studs seems to be loose. Yes, this is the one Paul Dudley was...
Mr. Keene, when you touch that nail head, a secret panel opened in the side of the desk. Look.
Yes. And look what it contains, Mike.
Saints preserve us. It's the sapphire, the Star of Death.
The most magnificent jewel I've ever seen. We'll take possession of it for the time being, Mike, and close this secret panel again. Don't say a word about this to any of them. As far as they're concerned, the sapphire is still missing.
Sure, and one of them's going to get a surprise, boss.
That's what I'm counting on. That secret panel in the desk is an ingenious contraption. It must have been specially made for someone.
Well, do you think Mark Adams had it made, Mr. Keene?
No. If he'd known about that secret panel, he'd have looked there the moment the jewel was missing.
Well, then who could have known?
The desk's original owner. Mr. Adams probably bought it from someone else.
Well, his daughter Kay'd know, sir.
Possibly, but I don't want to ask her in front of the others. I'll wait for an opportune time.
Are we staying here for the night?
Everyone else seems to be. We may as well join them.
Well, what's the next move, Mr. Keene?
We found the Star of Death, Mike, but we still have to find our killer. Frankly, I think I can almost do that now, but let's wait for overwhelming proof. And I wouldn't be surprised if we obtained that proof tonight.
Mr. Keene!
Shh, not so loud, Kay. I hope I didn't waken you.
No, I've been trying to read. Are the others asleep?
Apparently, all but Mike Clancy and myself. He's in the library waiting for me.
What is it you want, Mr. Keene?
I didn't get a chance to talk to you alone, otherwise I'd have asked you this before. Where did the furniture in this house come from? Did your father buy it himself?
No, it came with the house when we bought it.
How long ago was that?
2 years, Mr. Keene.
And who sold it to you?
Father never told me. I was in school in Switzerland at the time.
Where's the deed to the house? That would give the person's name.
Why, the deed must be in Father's safe.
And where's that?
In Father's study. Do you want the combination, Mr. Keene?
If you know it, Kay.
I do. Left 1, right 6, left 4, right 9.
I just jot that down. All right, Kay.
What are you going to do, Mr. Keene?
I'm going to put my hands on your father's murderer.
Mr. Keene?
Yes, Mike. Put the lights on here in the study.
Did you get what you were after, boss?
I have it right here. The deed to the house with the seller's name on it. Everything seems to have worked out according to my suspicions, Mike, but there's one more thing we have to do.
What's that?
It's going to throw a scare into a few innocent people, but it's the only way to get final proof. You go upstairs, Mike. Knock on every bedroom door and spread an alarm that the house is on fire.
Boss, are you joking?
No, Mike, I'm serious. Don't behave as if anyone's life is in danger at the moment. Just say the fire's in the cellar and they have plenty of time to leave. Then tell them that the fire has burned the telephone wires and that I've left to get the fire department.
And where will you really be, Mr. Keene?
I'll be in the library waiting for the killer to recover that sapphire, the Star of Death.
Now, take it easy, folks. There's nothing to get alarmed about. Mr. Keene's calling out the fire department. All right, now. Come on, this way out.
I'll put the lights on, Mrs. Waynard, so you can see that secret panel a little better.
Mr. Keene!
I was expecting you to drop by for the sapphire.
Don't move, Mr. Keene.
I see you've got a gun.
You planned this. There isn't any fire. You tricked me, Keene.
I began to suspect you this afternoon, Mrs. Waynard, when you tripped and fell at the psychological moment. While you were shouting at Edith Sims, you saw that Paul Dudley was interested in the desk. He noticed that loose nail head by accident, the one which opened the secret panel, And you distracted his attention and mine by falling suddenly and pretending to be hurt.
So I did, Mr. Keene.
Secondly, I found this deed. You were the one who sold this house and all the furniture in it to Mark Adams. So naturally, you must be the one who knew about the secret panel in that desk. When you murdered Adams, you knew you would be searched for the sapphire you stole, so you hid it there.
I sold Mark Adams this house because I lost my money, Mr. Keene. And I'm the kind of a woman who needs lots of it to live.
He paid you quite a sum for this house, according to the deed.
$150,000. But I'm used to having millions, Mr. Keene.
You must be quite a gambler to get rid of it so fast.
Yes, I love to gamble on anything. A roulette wheel, a race horse, or the turn of a card. I also like to live the way a woman of breeding is accustomed to live. That's why I wanted that sapphire.
No woman of breeding I ever knew was a cold-blooded murderer, Mrs. Waynard.
The Star of Death isn't inside that secret panel, Mr. Keene.
I know it isn't.
Which means you have it.
Perhaps.
Turn it over to me. I'm not playing games now, Keene. You'll either turn that sapphire over to me or you'll get a bullet in your head.
How would you get rid of the sapphire? A stone that size?
Stop stalling for time. I want that sapphire now.
Do you?
I'll count to 3. If you don't place it on top of that desk, I'll kill you. 1, 2.
Drop the gun. Drop it fast before I...
Oh, you put a bullet in my wrist.
Lucky you didn't get one in your heart.
For a moment, Mike, I thought you wouldn't return in time.
I wouldn't have missed you if I'd had the chance.
I know that. Mike?
Yes, boss.
Put in a call to Lieutenant Hale at police headquarters.
Okay, Mr. Keene.
Tell him we've managed to repay his patience and cooperation by solving this case. Say we found the Star of Death and the woman who murdered for it, and he can have them both at his convenience.
And so Mr. Keene finds the solution to the case of murder and the Star of Death. The next time you're suffering from the pains of headache, neuritis, or neuralgia, try Anacin. You'll bless the day you heard of this incredibly fast way to relieve these pains. Now, the reason Anacin is so wonderfully fast-acting and effective is this. Anacin is like a doctor's prescription. That is, Anacin contains not just one, but a combination of medically proven active ingredients in easy-to-take tablet form. Thousands of people have received envelopes containing Anacin tablets from their own dentist or physician, and in this way have discovered the incredibly fast relief Anacin brings from pain of headache, neuritis, or neuralgia. So next time such pains strike, take Anacin. For most effective relief, use only as directed. Your druggist has Anacin in handy boxes of 12 and 30, and economical family-size bottles of 50 and 100. The name is Anacin, A-N-A-C-I-N. Mr. Keene, Tracer of Lost Persons, is based on the novel Mr. Keene. The radio sequel is originated and produced by Frank and Ann Hummert. Dialogue by Lawrence Klee. It is on the air every Thursday at this time. We thank William Podmore, who appeared tonight as Mr. Keene for Bennett Kilpack, who's taking a short vacation on doctor's orders. Don't miss Mr. Keene next Thursday when the kindly old tracer turns to the African blowgun murder case.
So yeah, there
Ever
you
suffer
go.
heartburn from acid indigestion? New Bicidol mints, medically proven, quickly rid stomach of that blown-up feeling anywhere, anytime. Bicidol mints give longer-lasting relief than baking soda, help prevent immediate return of the trouble, soothe irritated stomach lining, let you sleep when indigestion strikes at night. Carry new Bicidol mints for fast relief. And always have Bicidol powder in your home.
Mr. Keene, Tracer of Lost Persons, will be on the air next Thursday at this same time. This is Larry Elliott saying goodbye for Mr. Keene and the Whitehall Pharmaceutical Company, makers of Anacin and Colonos, and many other dependable high-quality drug products. This is CBS, the Columbia Broadcasting System.
Well, there you go. That is Mr. Keen, Tracer of Lost Persons. And you got to hear so much of what made this show quirky and yet successful. I think if you had grown up watching Perry Mason, you might get that sort of sense of, there's got to be this drama behind it. There has to be someone who's noble, and there has to be someone who's haughty and evil, and it's there's a lot of classism, and there's a lot of socialites and humble people who are treated badly. I just love this kind of show. I didn't always, but I really learned to love it. Let's see. Joe says the show combined with the commercials was a real hoot. I'm so glad. I'm so glad that Raphael says I get the soap opera comparison. It is so nice to go visit an area that isn't so drenched in testosterone. I mean, frankly, the detective genre is so much about the tough guy and the detective, the two-fisted crime solver. So it's nice to take a little vacation and listen to what our grandmothers and our great-grandmothers used to listen to. And that would be a show like this one. Now, I had promised to tell the story about Ralphie from A Christmas Story and how the writers of this, primarily Frank Hummert, who really created the whole brand. He created all of this, and his wife Anne, and the writers that they would hire to write out their dialogue for a lot of episodes, including this one. Really it came from Frank. Now, you remember I told you Frank was a big advertising guy. He was huge in the advertising game, starting in 1920. And really never had a bad year. The guy just got more and more successful. One of Frank Hummert's first big breaks in advertising came when he coined a phrase for Procter & Gamble's soap, Camay. Camay. I think it's still on the shelves all this time later, Camay. He came up with the line, if you've ever heard this, for the skin you love to touch, Camay. He also created ads and slogans for companies like Quaker and Gold Medal Flour and Palmolive Soap and Ovaltine. That's right. The biggest advertiser of Ovaltine on the radio was Frank Hummert. Frank Hummert created the radio show to go with the comic strip Little Orphan Annie. Here, I'm going to share the screen with a over here. I'm going to share that. Cannot play the audio for you. Cannot do it. Is it on the screen? Hang on. Let me see if it is. No, it is not. All right, hang on. Gonna find it. Do you remember this scene from A Christmas Story, where Ralphie has finally received his decoder ring, and he is trying to do everything he can to solve this mystery, these clues that he got from Little Orphan Annie. And it's just this crucial moment in his life. He's 9 years old. And of course, it ends up being, be sure to drink your Ovaltine. And he's a heartbroken little kid. Well, that's the sort of thing that Frank Hummert created. That's the kind of thing that he did. And yes, as Joe remembers, classic, a crummy commercial. Poor Randy is about to pee his pants. Randy needs to get into the bathroom, but Ralphie needs the privacy. And there he goes. A crummy commercial? And that's what it was. And that is Frank Hummert in a nutshell. That is exactly the kind of thing that Frank Hummert did. Here, I need to stop sharing that. Oh, this is very cute. I do want to play. Now, we might get kicked off the air for this last thing I want to play for you. It's an audio piece. I don't have the confidence I normally have when I play these shows because a lot of these shows are orphaned. Not that their copyrights don't exist, but there's really no one, guarding the playing or the sharing of these shows. And that's great because frankly, these shows are fantastic. They are so old. They belong to everybody at this point, as far as I'm concerned, but who am I? This show's that I want to play for you is a little tougher. Raphael saying don't do it. Raphael has been here plenty of times when I've gotten my butt kicked off the air. Because I do like to play a little fast and loose sometimes with the copyrights. I want to play for you the Bob. Now, I told you Bob and Ray made fun of one of the Hummert's shows, Mary Noble Backstage Wife, and they did a show called Mary Backstage Noble Wife. Well, of course, they did one for Mr. Keene, and their version, well, I'll just play it for you.
Time again for Mr. Trace, keener than most persons. Today, the surly old investigator draws from his files the folder marked The Peg-Leg Men Murder Clue. It's late of an afternoon in some season, and in his office, Spike Delancey expostulates.
Look here, boss. In my sandwich, worms.
What's that, Spike?
They look like worms.
Oh.
Saints preserve us, boss. You don't suppose that somebody's trying to get me, boss?
I would say this is a plot of some kind, Spike. Something more deadly than anything that man could imagine.
I hate worms in my sandwich, boss.
Spike, I think the heat has been getting you a little bit. Here, sit down by the air conditioner and cool off.
All right, boss.
Here, let me pour you a glass of cold water from the water cooler.
Thank you, boss. You wouldn't be after having a little beer, would you, boss?
I think there's some in the cooler, Spike.
Fine, thank you, sir. I'll go help myself, boss.
You do that, Spike.
Meanwhile, you look for food.
Spike.
My teeth almost came out, boss. I was saying clues.
Clues, right, Spike. I'll look through my report on the last case. Nothing in here about sandwiches. Nothing in here about murder.
Say for service, boss.
The door, Spike.
Do you want me to open it, boss?
I think you'd better. Someone evidently seeks to enter through the attic.
Wait. All right.
Why, who are you? Lurking there behind the silken curtains which cover the door to my air-conditioned office.
I'm not lurking, sir. I'm right here. I want to talk to you.
Spike, it looks like some kind of a peg-legged person.
Saints preserve us.
A seafaring man, perhaps.
Obviously so, boss.
Yes.
Look, he has a hook tool in one arm,
He has
boss.
an evil glint in his eye.
Saints preserve us.
I wonder why he's come here, Spike, and why he stands there in the doorway, looking at us in contemplation, as if at any moment he might attack in some way. Or else, maybe he's here asking for help, wanting us to help him. No, it's not for help. He's here to fire at us, Spike.
Saints preserve us, boss.
Yes, I
Get
quickly
down in
deduced
back
that
of the
fact.
desk.
All right. It's going to be open warfare.
I want to talk to ye. Both of ye.
Us, sir?
Yes, ye. Both of ye.
Well, come in and sit down.
Saints preserve us, boss. I
Looks
don't like
a
the look
bad
of this.
crime, Spike.
Oh, God.
Here, I'll sit here.
I think I'll call this case the Peg-Legged Men Murder Clue. And so we learn why Mr. Trace calls this case the Peg-Legged Men Murder Clue. Be sure and join us next time when we'll hear the old seafarer say,
And then the boat settled on her side and sank beneath the waves, and I went down with it, fulfilling the unwritten oath of all men.
in the next episode of Mr. Trace, keener than most persons.
Sailing the seas, their life's work. And then I remember, about 3 days after I went down,
Oh my God. My my father loved Bob and Ray, and he used to give me Bob and Ray books that contained their scripts from their radio shows, and that was one of those things that we always bonded over was Bob and Ray. And again, something I learned to really appreciate the older I got. So there you go. That is Mr. Trace, keener than most persons. What a full show it has been. I am so happy you joined me. I'm so glad that it went as well as it did, frankly. As much as I might complain about this episode, because a lot of things went wrong. This was still a lot of fun, and you being here and the chat just made it so wonderful. So we appreciate that so much. Next week we're going to play a show from. Now, this detective was, for the longest time, the writer of his stories. Now, granted, it's a pseudonym, and there were other people writing under the name of this detective, but he did very quickly become one of the most popular detectives in the United States and eventually in the world. And that, of course, would be Ellery Queen. Ellery Queen was a different kind of show where they would present all of the evidence for you to put together and try to solve the crime. And at some point, there would be a conversation that they would try to, push forward to get people to try to solve it. So that was something you would do at home. And I hope you do it at home when we're listening to The Adventures of Ellery Queen, the man who was murdered by installments. Come on. That's just a great title. So that is next week on Web O Mystery. I hope you join me for that. Coming up, the very next show that we'll be doing here at the Weber Internet Thingy is Joe Townsend and I will be presenting alongside our good friend Mike Sauter, who is quite the researcher and has certain things that he absolutely loves, one of them being the detective Nero Wolfe. So now we have played Nero Wolfe here on the Web O Mystery, but we're going to be watching a pilot episode. So sometimes pilot episodes air. This one apparently never did. It's in black and white, and it is a TV series that they pitched of Nero Wolfe and Kurt Kastner. Did I remember the name correctly this time, Raphael? I think it's Kurt Kastner plays Nero Wolfe, and his detective Legman, his assistant who does all the work for him, Archie Goodwin, is played by a young man named William Shatner. So that will be very exciting. I hope you'll join us for that. We're going to be doing an overview of movies and TV versions of Nero Wolfe. Mike is just raring to go. He and I had a great conversation this morning about this. So it's going to be a lot of fun this Sunday. And that'll be at 5 p.m. Our Sunday show is at 5 p.m., 8 p.m. on the East Coast. And then we are going to do a special Star Trek show. You're going to just have such a good time with this. We will make this fun. Joe and I have said, look, whenever a new Star Trek show or movie, in this case, comes out, we should talk about it. And so on Retro Trekkers, rather than do what we usually do and find an old episode of Star Trek to recap and review and talk about it live, we're going to be recapping and reviewing Section 31, which debuts. Did it debut last night at midnight? No, tonight. It debuts tonight, I believe, right after midnight. So Section 31. We don't use the phrase failed TV pilot here. This is a movie. It's a Trek flicks. So we'll be having a good time with that. And of course, joining us, one of the biggest Star Trek fans that Joe and I know, Eric Kramer, our good friend Eric Kramer from Good Luck Charlie. And he was the very first Mighty Thor. He was in Lodge 49. I met him when he and I were on the Hughleys, where I played his best friend, which is funny because he's the white best friend and I am the white best friend's best friend. So Eric will be joining me and Joe. We're going to be having a great time breaking down Section 31 for you. If you watch it, and I do urge you to watch it so that we all have something to talk about. If not, we will recap it for you and we will review it for you. And maybe you'll be having a good time. I hope so. Yeah, there's Raphael. It debuts tonight. Joe says he'll be watching it tomorrow, and Raphael says ditto, and that might be the same for me as well. Is that all the upcoming shows? I think it is. So look at me, went over an hour. Hate when I do that. Thank you so much for being on the show. I am just gonna, because my video files are not working, I'm just going to upload here. Check out our good friend Joe Townsell over at joetownsell.com. His new collection is coming up this year, and it's coming up soon. Joe tells us that it's in shape and it's almost ready to go. So we're getting very excited about that. Joe, I'm sorry, I'm just blabbering through your commercial. It will be a collection of stories, lots of through lines. If you are acquainted with the larger mythology and universe of Joe Townsell's stories, you're going to see a lot of things in there that little nod of the hat to you, man. So that's really fun. Here we go. Joe says, thanks so much for a great show, and as always, thank you for your support. JoeTownsell.com. Absolutely. Joe should be great. We should be great. Okay. Oh, this was my perfect opportunity to load up another video file, and why did I not do that? And that would be, oh my gosh, I am so sorry about this. It's not my fault. It's not my fault. It's totally my fault. No, it's not. It's not. Because okay, this is the end credits, right? Here we go. Woo! Great show, everybody. Thank you. No, StreamYard jumped all my videos, so I had to reload. And well, the word of the day. I thank you, Spider Cat. Thank you, Spider Cat. Thank you. See you next week. Ellery Green, it'll be a lot of fun. Tell your friends. Bye.